Let's talk about how you get to work. The 2025 Regional Commuter Survey is out, providing some key insights into how people around Metro Atlanta, specifically the 20 county area around Atlanta, travels to work and how those patterns evolve over time. Let's dig into this some more. We have Johan Weber joining us there on the left and Casey Sloan on the right from the Atlanta Regional Commission. Good morning to you both. Thank you for your time.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
So, what are your biggest takeaways from this year's survey?
The biggest takeaways are that, compared to 2019, we've seen that, during the pandemic, obviously everybody was teleworking. Telework went way up. But, compared to pre-pandemic levels, we've seen that in 2025, telework is actually remaining pretty high. So back in 2019, we saw about 43% of workers were teleworking, at least occasionally. And that has now gone up to 60%. So 60% of workers are teleworking, whether occasional or full time. But probably more significantly, we saw that the percent of workers who are full time teleworking, so they're working from home every day, they're not commuting, has gone up from 6% in 2019 to 20% in 2025. So right now, 1 in 5 workers are full time work from home and not commuting at all.
Wow. And what have you seen with that number in recent years? I mean, take me back to 2020 era when I imagine that was maybe closer to 100. And then has it just been
Yeah.
gradually been going down year by year?
Well, this is the first time we've done the regional commuter survey since 2019. So we're not taking this, we're not gauging that year after year, but we've definitely seen. I think everyone's seen. Yes, we finally determined this was the time in late 2024 to do that, and so that we did the commuter survey early 2025. So we have seen anecdotally return to office. It's been pretty steadily happening, but I think that this shows that this is sort of a new normal. This pattern of telework's here to stay. We'll probably see a continued return to office, but I think these general levels of teleworking are going to remain. We've also saw that we and part-time workers. They're relatively small increases from 2019, but still significant. So that sort of supports other data we're seeing that the peak period traffic is just kind of spread more throughout the day now. So those peak times have gone down a little bit, but you're going to see traffic just kind of throughout the day.
Our traffic reporter, Doug Turnbull, here nodding in agreement. He covers traffic here and has for decades. I mean, that's something you see too, Doug.
Well, yeah, as we had more options, as commutes became less regular, which I think was a big punchline of this study, right? That yeah, the midday traffic with people being at home and maybe able to be more flexible to run errands has gone up. And certainly there's just more people heading into the region. And I wanted to ask about another pattern. I just quickly glanced at the survey there, guys, but is that alternative forms of transportation are down. I would assume that means like public transit and carpooling. And I know you all have big partnerships with the ATL, the overall mass transit organization in Atlanta, and of course MARTA falls under that, and with Georgia Commute Options, which promotes carpooling. So can you speak to how people are viewing anything other than riding by themselves in a car?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved to reflect that we have fewer folks whose primary mode is transit, whether that's bus, rail, commuter bus. Carpooling is significantly down over it was in 2019. We have experienced, and ridership data, of course, supports also that transit is down. At Georgia Commute Options, which is the program that I'm part of the team for, we have noticed that we have had less carpooling activity than we have had pre-COVID. We have seen that starting to rise over the last couple of years. With that trend, back towards more in-office work, we are seeing, transit ridership come. We are seeing carpool interest coming back up. They're not quite at the same level that we're seeing. Other data, their commute data seems to suggest that they're just not recovered quite as quickly. And we think a lot of that is, if you were shifting into coming in a couple days a week and traffic is very light, and there's other contexts around whether that's public health, concerns or a variety of other things. Your schedules are more flexible. There are lots of reasons that folks were defaulting into driving. When perhaps pre-COVID, there were reasons, more compelling reasons, especially with congestion, not to that. Well, now as congestion is coming back, we are seeing more interest, having more conversations with employers, and more interest from commuters in some of those other options.
Interesting.
Hey, you also found an equity gap in telework access. And I'm just curious to know how you think cities should be interpreting that when it comes to maybe transportation planning down the road.
We actually, we had a little hiccup in the feed there. Could you repeat that question?
Just asking about some of the findings when it comes to equity gaps and telework access. And just curious to know how you think cities should be interpreting that and using it for transportation planning.
That's such a big question. Yeah, I'm sure our whole transportation planning department would have interesting takes on it. From our perspective, in terms of thinking about how to support commuters programming wise across the region, we view it as certainly not everyone has the opportunity to be working remotely part-time, much less those folks who are working remotely full-time. Their experience with commuting is going to be very different than those folks who are commuting to a job 5 days a week on a pretty rigid schedule. But when we think about the services and offerings for folks who are commuting every day, the need is every bit what it was in 2019 and years prior. From our program perspective, we're very attentive to how are we supporting folks across the region with commuting. If you work at in a manufacturing facility, a logistics facility, we are certainly trying to make sure that there are as many tools and services, particularly engaging with employers as we can. Obviously, it's a process, and particularly bringing employers to the table is one of the more challenging parts of our work. But it's also the area that we are really excited about and hopeful as commuting and traffic kind of is back as one of the priority topics, as we've seen in the Metro Atlanta Speaks data. That's another one of ARC's data collection projects. We see that need and that interest, and we hope to continue to support it.
As we wrap up, guys, I wanted to ask, you mentioned employers. That as I've talked to your team at Georgia Commute Options before, and that's always been a big partnership. How do we get employers to work with each other or work with employees to encourage carpooling and incentivize it within their own campuses? And then we saw this novel thing during COVID, teleworking, and it seems like a lot of employers are going the opposite way of that and demanding not just some work in the office, but all 5 days or 7 days a week. So what would be a statement you would make to employers if they were trying to help with traffic and to help with these options? Or what's a place that they could go to maybe network and learn more about how to, I guess, help the whole ecosystem of the commute?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it is, anything they do does help the kind of broader, regional, but frankly, it also really helps them. Having some programs, having some services at your work site has really big impacts on recruitment, retention, job satisfaction. We see that in this same data that one of the major factors that folks identify for those folks who changed work locations in the last year was length of commute. In fact, it came up above some of the other things that frankly I probably would have hypothesized would show up as primary motivations. So we know commuting is a big piece of it. If you're an employer, there are a lot of things that you can do that are not really that complicated, like to implement. Have a transit program if you are in an area that is served by commuter bus or local bus or MARTA rail. That is not an insignificant part of the proportion of the region, especially when we think about employment centers. So setting something up where employees can buy passes free pre-tax does not cost very much to administer at all, and there's no direct cost, and employees just save some money right away. You can buy passes through MARTA and get additional discounts. We can help them set that up. they can take further steps. Setting up carpool program, excuse me, is also something that, we are there to work with employers on. So we always just encourage folks, go to gacommuteoptions.com, that you'll see an employer section, reach out to members of our team. Our services are provided at no cost, funded by GDOT and the Atlanta Regional Commission. So we just encourage folks, if commuting is something that you hear complaints about, that you view as a challenge or a concern, don't miss out on the opportunity to do something about it. And that's what we're here for.
Thank you both for your time.
Yes.
I can tell a whole lot of work went into this survey. There's a reason it is not done every year. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to explain a little more about it. Have a good one.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.